Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chasing, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout. Mic check, lights flash, game time, stay ready. 2 vets in the zone, keep the pressure real heavy. Big hits, big plays, yeah, we breaking it down. Truth rings in your speakers, every word is the crown. From the north side hustle to that southern flame. Midwest grind, west coast of the game. Sports talk kings, yeah, we wear that crown. Turn it up, let them know it's about to go down. Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chaser, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout.
It's about to go down.
Yes. And if you've been watching CBS, TNT, or True TV, you would know that it already went down. The madness is here. Sports Reports' order is here. These are the sounds brought to you by the one and only world famous and world renowned. He is cool, calm, and collected. He goes by the name of Mr. Logical. I'm your unorthodox statistician, 2-5. We got a lot to get to, lots of NBA. Playoffs are coming up. And, of course, we're going to start it off with a little March Madness. But before we do, remember that we are everywhere you get your podcasts. So please like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things, do all the good things. Liquid Death in hand, toted up. You know what I'm saying? Shout out, say less, say more. Check us out. Let's get right to it, Mr. Logical. The NCAA tournament is here. And before we get too deep into this, let's talk about one of my favorite ladies. Let's talk about Cinderella, because everybody's on this mission now that Cinderella's gone. We're panicking. NIL has ruined it. Where do you stand on this issue?
I think the NIL argument is the laziest argument, and I don't understand for the life of me why people keep making that same argument. It is not. It is an element of college sports, but it's not the reason why Duke is better than Akron. It's not the reason that Kentucky gets top-tier talent. It's not the reason that Arkansas has a guy who just got an NIL deal with Reebok. It's literally not a problem. The money and the separate and the separate in the gap between available funds of all the top tier teams has always been there. Oregon has never been in a deficit financially. Never. It never has. Michigan is a Jordan school. They get everything they need. Maryland is another Big Ten school that has an Under Armour deal. Their money isn't the same as the other Big Ten team, like I said, Michigan, as a Jordan school. The money has always been different for every team. The way the university allocates the money and the way they allocate resources to recruiting has always been different based off the results that the schools are typically getting. Alabama, with Nick Saban, was constantly competing for national championships. They probably funneled a greater percentage of whatever available funds to the football team because of that fact. It wasn't because they wanted to sign more players. They just knew like that was our moneymaker, and we were competing at the highest level every single year. Virginia Tech didn't spend as much money as Alabama. It's not because now they can pay players. It's different. Basketball is also, if I'm a basketball top tier player, I'm going to go to the school that's going to be the easiest path to the NBA. Football, yeah, you could get a guy that might be a little undersized, like a guy's 5'11" at quarterback. He might have to go to Division II school because a D1 school says you're not tall enough. NBA or college basketball is like they're going to get the best players. UConn's going to get the best players. Kentucky's going to get the best players. Texas is a state-loved school. Everyone's parents, a group who love Texas. They're going to get the best athletes in the state of Texas for all their sports. It's nothing to do with NIL. The money was already there. The players are just getting a percentage of it. Probably like 2 to 3% of all the money that's actually coming in. So it's not that big of a deal. It's not ruining college sports. So stop making that lazy argument that it is.
So for me, a couple things, as far as this particular tournament within itself, you know what I mean? We had Sienna lead Duke for about the first 30 to 35 minutes of that game. You know what I mean? And maybe if Jerry McNamara makes a substitution or two, maybe his guys don't run out of air and they pull off one of the biggest upsets we've ever seen. Remember, I talked about it last week. If there is a 12 that has the best chance to win, it was going to be High Point. And what happened? High Point won. You know what I mean? And they pushed Arkansas to the brink. That was a one possession game with about 2 minutes left. You know what I mean? You had McNeese State challenge Gonzaga, had them up on the ropes. They never really were, I would say, a threat to take the lead late in the game, but they were around. McNeese and Vanderbilt was a one possession game with about 4 minutes left. So we saw this. Like, these teams are not that far away. It's not as if, I know Nebraska destroyed Troy by 29 points, go Huskers, but it's not as though this was something common across the board that we saw. This is the second straight year that no mid-major made it to the Sweet 16. But you know what we did get, Mr. Logical? We got a Nebraska-Iowa match that nobody would have ever thought could happen. You know what I'm saying? We have 3 teams in the Sweet 16 right now that have never made a Final Four before. You know what I mean? We have 10 teams in the Sweet 16 right now that have never won a national title. So, yes, it may not be Cinderella in the effect of a Fred Van Vliet or Bryce Drew hitting a shot against Ole Miss or something along those lines. But there is plenty. There's not going to be a Kansas in the Final Four. There's not going to be a Kentucky in the Final Four. North Carolina lost in the first round. Okay. So we still have moments in this tournament that says it's okay. You know what I mean? Like going forward.
And with those kind of like the Tyus Edney shots from like the mid 90s, like you talked about Drew with Valparaiso, we talk about Princeton those were at different eras versions of Cinderella. It won't be like that again because when Steph Curry came on dominated with Davidson, like I said, they weren't playing preseason tournaments where they're inviting teams like Davidson to play against Big Ten schools and you got to see them on ESPN. You literally would hear about guys and then you show up at the tournament and all of a sudden Wally Zerbiak is dropping 40. It just was happening. It was happening organically. This current era, there's no surprises. Everything is right there in front of you. You're in your phone. We know I can type any information about any of these guys. I can click a button. I know all about Donovan Dent from UCLA. You didn't know that in 2001, 2004, 2005, and all these different. So it's like people are clamoring for the Cinderellas of an era that you're not going to get. You're not going to get it because the exposure is too great. I know Jerry McNamara went to Syracuse and they all knew about him when he was coaching. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to get this surprise team out of, some random part of America and they're going to come and they're going to dominate Duke. You knew what you were going to get. The information is out there. Back in the day, no one was looking at Princeton film when they came in the NCAA tournament and was hitting people with these back cuts and getting layups at the layup at the layup at the layup. That wasn't a common thing. So I think people are looking at something that doesn't fit their era and we're like, I want that. Look at what you currently have. Like you said, 10 teams ever won a national championship. There's multiple teams. Nebraska's ever won an NCAA tournament game until this year. So it's like, this is what you have.
Yeah.
We for what you have is like, you want something from another era that doesn't fit.
Yeah. We got a defending champion that lost in the second round. You know what I mean? Which is a thing because outside of UConn in the last 15 years, a lot of the national champions don't make it to the Sweet 16 the next year. I guess that's kind of like the NFL Super Bowl hangover thing or something. But Florida's gone. We got a number 1 seed out of here the first weekend. You know what I mean? Thank God it was.
That's not good enough. They wanted a 16. People want a 16 to beat a 1. They want 2 15s to beat 2s. They want a 13 to beat a 4. And they want one of them to make it to the Sweet 16.
And Tommy Lloyd, the head coach at Arizona, he brought this up after their game against Utah State on Sunday. he said that's not an 8 seed that we were just playing against. They were the Mountain West regular season and tournament champions. You know what I mean? They probably should have been at least a 6. And we were talking about this a little bit last week because UConn, got the 2 seed, even though they lost 2 out of 3 to St. John's. St. John's won the Big East regular season and conference tournament that got a 5. You know what I mean? So
Purdue was 7 in their own conference tournament, and they got a 2 overall.
Right. Hey. And guess what? I know their name is Texas, but we got a double-digit seed. We got an 11 seed in the Sweet 16. And you and I were sitting up here 2-3 weeks ago talking about Texas shouldn't even be in the tournament. And,
I
here they are.
Like one of these, if you're in the top SEC program or something like that, and you got to scramble.
And all Mr. Logical had to do was listen to me when I told him Texas was going to beat BYU. That's all he had to do. You know what I'm saying? I told you that.
I mean, the Bonds dropped like 40. I mean, he dropped 40. They had a couple of bad turnovers in that game, but he put up 40. I know you want to talk about the one and done.
So let's get to the action.
The thumbnail.
Yeah, so we were talking about this last week when we were doing our tournament preview. That was one of my takeaways, is that these one and done players don't generally make it far. And when they do, even if they do, they end up losing in very spectacular fashion, So we had Carmelo back in 2003. Kevin Durant didn't make the Sweet 16. You go up and down the list over the years. You had John Wall in the gang, made the Final Four, but then went 3 for 34 from 3 in the game against West Virginia. That national title was theirs. Or you had, I got to keep picking on Kentucky, I guess. You had Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker on the same team with the Harrison twins, making the 38-0
team too.
No, he was later. But I'll get to that later. I'll get to that later. Trust me, that's in here.
Okay.
But you had that team go 38-0 and lost to a very unspectacular Wisconsin team in the Final Four, led by the one and only Sam Decker and Frank the Tank. You know what I mean? So this one and done thing, and when you look at this season, we were talking about Darren Peterson. He was the talk of the town a couple of weeks ago. He wasn't playing a lot. He was checking himself out of games. And then I talked about how I thought there might have been some chemistry concerns, and then we get to the NCAA tournament, and I ain't going to say he played awful. You know what I mean? He looks the part, but, he went 16 for 39 in his 2 tournament games. He had 5 total rebounds in 2 tournament games. And, by the way, he could have probably played a little bit better defense on that final possession where St. John's, got that layup.
Defense was that bad. I think he thought
it was bad strategy. I think it was bad strategy, even leading up, not necessarily just restricted to that particular play, but the whole strategy, I think, was just off because Kansas did a good job. Some people might say it was the refs. Kansas did a very good job of not fouling St. John's a lot in the second half. So when you get to the end of the game, generally, you have your fouls to stop the clock, put the team on the other free throw line if you want, get an extra possession, so on and so forth. But Kansas only made it to the last couple seconds of the game with about 3 team fouls. So they had to keep fouling, to disrupt St. John's, which led to this moment that we're talking about when, they could have probably fouled St. John's, got the ball back if they had more fouls if they didn't have the fouls to give. So now Bill Self is talking about, he doesn't know if he's coming back next year. And there's rumors already that Jock Vaughn might be in line to get that job. But Darren Peterson, he looks the part. He looks dynamic. He looks like he can get to his spots. He looks unstoppable. Like when you look at a guy like him and they lose a basketball game in the NBA playoffs, the takeaway is going to be, can't nobody beat him but himself. And I think that's what I saw a little bit in the tournament, because we get to this ISO game where people want to be the hero. And I'm not saying that he went Kobe style and jacked all the shots, but the shots that he was taking.
Both teams were shooting poorly. Like I watched the first half of that game, ended up watching something else. But I remember it was like 6 possessions back and forth where it just was like dribble drive, bad layup, rebound, scrapping for the ball, fast breakdown the other way, dribble drive,
Yeah, that
layup,
game was
bad,
begging
jump
for,
shot, bad. It was like,
and as
yeah,
Stephen A
so
would say, I'm not trying to cast any aspersions, but those are the type of moments that you look for. This one and done. Can he be the number 1 draft pick? This is where you look at him and say, you're supposed to be the difference here.
yeah, you should be the difference. But like I said, the game they were shooting so poorly. And we talk about the defense. I know he's been getting a lot of flack because of the quote unquote low management and from the outside, and the story that we've been getting, either he's injured or he's cramping or he's consistently injured or he's battling through something. For him to be the guy that gives up the layup, it's tough. But the guy that he was guarding didn't score a point all game, and he just was like, on top of the fact that, once again, I said about Kawhi in that Philadelphia Toronto series, he traveled on the catch. Like, he caught the ball and took like a skip step and then dribbled the ball. So like,
hey, come on, man!
Like,
come on! Don't be hating on the crab dribble.
on bells, as Patino calls them. But that was probably the smartest play. I think sometimes basketball coaches can draw up all these things and they be kind of confusing. But it's like, yeah, just get downhill, get to the rim, get to your spot near the rim, and see what you have. Or if you can pull up.
Yeah, and that's another thing about this tournament.
Simple, no screens and all these passes. I think guys have just been like, you know what? Give me the ball. Let me make this moment happen. We saw it against Vanderbilt. Like, that 3 goes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That was another thing we had in this tournament. We still had great endings. That Vanderbilt ending that you're talking about gave me Gordon Hayward flashbacks. Then you had the Kentucky.
They did a sports science on that. It said if the ball would have hit a half inch shorter, Butler would have won that the national
title. Yeah,
like
and then you had the Kentucky Santa Clara ending where Otega Owe, hit the shot beyond half court to send it into overtime off the glass. So like, we still have these
Santa Clara
moments.
Player just knocking down the 3 calmly in that frantic situation. Kentucky ties the game up. You're Santa Clara. You're playing against a blue blood, like an original iconic name in college basketball. And you just come down calmly, get the ball on the right wing, say, hey, this is my shot, knock it down. I think if he didn't run back so far celebrating, he might have been there to kind of defend, because he ran across half court celebrating his made 3, which allowed Kentucky guy to get just to be on half court. I think if he stays where he shoots that 3 and he plays defense, he doesn't get.
And that's the beautiful thing about. And that's the beautiful thing about March Madness, right? You got a guy like Otega Owe, and I'm not saying that just because he plays for Kentucky, but we're talking about Darren Peterson, AJ DeBoncha, Cameron Boozer, Darius Acuff. This is a guy that's probably not going to get drafted that had 35, 8, and 7 in an NCAA tournament game and hit that shot to send it to overtime. Don't tell me that the tournament is bad right now. But also continuing on, AJ DeBoncha, 11 for 25, he scored his 35 points or whatever against Texas. I'm ready to see him with NBA spacing. And before I go any further, let me ask you a question. This is something I've been dying to ask you. So I know that a lot of people are under the impression that, hey, now that we have NIL, a lot of these on the brink guys that could be a lottery pick, but maybe not a lottery pick, are going to come back to school. Do you think we ever get to the point that we see a DeBoncha or a Peterson type guy come back?
All right. While I'm answering that, can you look up the rookie contracts for like the first round? Because I have the NIL stats here. If you are going to be we'll say top 10. We'll say you're going to be in the top 10. With the NBA being just 30 teams and all these trade deals, at 8, you could end up on Like you could be on a decent team. Like you could end up with Phoenix because they made a trade back in the day, and somehow they ended up with,
I mean,
you know,
go no
Philly's
further than
pick
last
they
year. Go
traded.
no further than last year. Cooper Flag going to Dallas. You know, it's just. I mean, Kyrie was hurt, and you know.
Yeah, you needed like that. You needed that was an abnormal way for them to get the number 1 pick. I'm just thinking like somewhere simple, like 8. Like you could end up on Minnesota based off the trade they made with Karl Anthony Towns and some other team, and they could just have like the 9th or 10th pick. So OKC, you could just be in a good position. So I think that's something that's a factor in. Also, BYU played 32 games this year, probably
something along those
something
lines.
like that. So when those 30, 32, 33, AJ got between $4 and $7.5 million for 30 games, and he's big man on campus. And you saw the press conference where they made him take the Red Bull can down. I think this was in the Big 12 tournament. So I think he has a Red Bull deal as well.
They played 35 games.
35 games. He's got $7.5 million, and he's big man on campus. Maybe to stay, they say, hey, we'll give you 10. You can play a couple of years of college basketball, get 10, or you can get whatever the number 1 overall pick, and you're going to Washington. You know, you're going to be a Wizard. Like,
so as of right now, as of right now, the number 1 draft pick in the NBA gets a 4-year, $62.7 million contract, and the first year salary is about 13.8.
So 13.8 before you get your eligible for your extension, probably at the 2 full seasons going into your 3rd, which is a rookie super max. But you got to be on a team that's good enough to where they think giving you the super max makes sense. Because I don't know if you're on the Wizards and it's not working out, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have to give you some kind of deal. But like, so that's 13.8.
And then if you're at the end of the lottery, so number 14, you get 4 years, 23.4, and your first year contract is about 4.9. So they're guaranteed for the first 2 years, but then there's team options that 3rd and 4th year.
I will say that unless you just feel as a player, I'm not going to get any better in college, or I'm just going to strike while the iron's hot and then use the NBA to leverage other monetary opportunities. If you're 11, if you have an agent or your evaluator telling you, hey, you can go anywhere between 11 and 17, but AJ DeBonce is leaving BYU, and BYU is like, hey, come here, follow honor code, we'll give you $6.5 million. I think that those guys will entertain it. The guys that are going to go 1 through 5 guaranteed, walk themselves into a shoe deal, walk themselves into a Gatorade deal, a Powerade deal, a Chevy deal, all of these deals that you're just going to walk yourself into all these ancillary NBA contract, sponsorships. Then you leave. But at 11, I don't know if at 11 you walk into a Chevy deal or a State Farm deal like Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag's and State Farm commercials. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you get that deal at 11. So I say unless you feel like, I'm ready for the NBA, like if you have the NBA body, you have the size. But if you think like, hey, I can stay in school, put on 8 to 10 more pounds, work on my game, work on my craft a little bit more, maybe make another run at the tournament. I can see guys who are in that 11 to 17 evaluation range saying, I'll come back for 1 more year.
Yeah, and Darius Acuff from Arkansas, he just became the first college basketball player to get a shoe deal while he was still in school, signing up with AI and Reebok, and, and he's the goods. Like in any other year, he might be the number 1 overall draft pick. You know what I mean? But he's in there with these guys, Darren Peterson, looks like young Kawhi at times. You got DeBoncha, who looks like a little bit of Kevin Durant, but at Jaylen Brown size or something like that. You know what I mean? So like Any other year, he would probably go number one. But then we got Cameron Boozer. You know, what have you seen from him in the tournament so far?
I'm not sure if I think if anyone does come back, I think the bigs will come back. I think the guards, the guys who can score off the dribble, the guys who can score in space, I think they are more likely to come back. Boozer, I think he can etch out a really quality NBA career, but when you're a certain size, I think you have to have something exceptional. I think he has good footwork. I think he's really good college player. I'm not sure if it's going to translate to the NBA because you're going to be banging with some super athletic 4s and 5s. Can you guard Jokic? Can you guard Giannis? Can you guard LeBron if he decides to come back and play the 4? Like, can you switch on the Paolo Bank? You know, like a lot of these guys, that's his space. That's the range he's going to be in. Is he going to measure the way they have him in school? He's probably listed at like 6'10" or something like that. But when you get him they got him at 6'9", they're going to get him to the combine. What if he's closer to 6'7"?
Yeah, they got him at 6'9", 250.
Yeah. So you get him in the combine and he's 6'7.5".
So there's times where
how you play him.
I fluctuate on him. There's times where I look at him and I see, like, every now and again I see Joker light, because I think, you know, his passing ability is something that he doesn't get the recognition for that he probably deserves. But then there's times where I'm like, is he just smaller Al Horford? You know what I mean? And is that a bad thing? You know what I mean? I don't think it is, but if you're going to go, say, top 3, it could be, I guess.
If you stick on the OKC's roster, then yeah, you could be that. But if you end up on
the Wizards,
like,
you know what I'm saying?
The Wizards or
the Pacers.
The Pacers, I think the Pacers can find space.
Well, they got Halliburton at least.
They have a star coming back and they play a certain style that might be conducive. But if that's where it's all about fit. And I think when you get drafted in the top 5, in theory, you should be able to fit anywhere. It shouldn't be about style and fit. If I'm going to draft you that high, like, I need you to plug and play. I need you to get drafted in Brooklyn from the draft. I need to get you on a plane. And if we have practice the next morning, I need to be able to give you 2 or 3 other plays that you can just plug right in and start running your position. Obviously you have to learn, but I don't know if I could take you top 3 to 5 and still have to figure out, are you Horford or are you your Pops? Carlos Boozer, you know, was a fine NBA player. Are you Taj Gibson or are you Joker Light? Are you Şengün? Now, Şengün needs to work on his defense, but like if the NBA has room for like Şengün, I'm pretty sure Cameron Boozer can fit that same space.
Yeah, so fresh off the presses as of 2 minutes ago, Hubert Davis out at North Carolina. And you know, it's one of those careers that is just, I don't even know how to explain it, because I think North Carolina is in that space where they don't want to become Indiana, but you also have to give them the fact that Caleb Wilson was out for the season too, their best player, who probably could go in front of Cam Boozer in the draft.
To have like 3 best players. They got a
good team. They got Seth Trimble, they got Vassar, and you know, and they had Caleb Wilson, but he got hurt. They blew that 19-point lead against VCU in the first round. First time in school history North Carolina has lost back-to-back first round NCAA tournament appearances. But when you go back and look at it, you know, he knocked out Coach K, final game at Cameron Indoor. You know, he knocked out Coach K in the first ever North Carolina Duke Final Four matchup. Made the national title game, but that was a team that was up and down, topsy-turvy, if you will. You know what I mean? Then, you know, last year, you know, I was a big proponent of they shouldn't have made the tournament, but they beat San Diego State in the first 4. Okay, that's cool. Then they lost in the first round to Ole Miss. And then, of course, you know, this happened this year. So is this a situation, because I know Larry Brown came out and gave Hubert Davis support. Is this a situation where Hubert had to go right now? I'm not so sure. But I'm also a believer, as we talk about Mark Pope a little bit later, like you got to get out of it if you can.
I was going to bring that up because I saw something the other day and it was talking about Kentucky. And sometimes organizations can think that they are bigger than the coach, and sometimes the coach can think he's bigger than the organization. Kentucky with Calipari going to Arkansas is like, okay, I think some of your NBA talent attraction to the school was through Calipari. Like that's how you were getting these guys here. It wasn't guys going to Kentucky because they wanted to go to Kentucky. They went to Kentucky because they wanted to play for John Calipari. North Carolina might be in that same boat where it's like you probably thought that just because you're North Carolina, you're going to be able to pull all these blue chips in, and then it comes down to like, I don't know if I want to play for this coach. I don't know if that coach has the type of style that I want, and I don't know if that coach has a type of charisma to where I'm just like, yeah, it's North Carolina, but I'm like, is the coach really the guy? And that's why you have to make that move. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Kentucky might be regretting it because Calipari is such a personality, but he didn't, like you say, he didn't win a shit ton of championships.
We're not regretting it.
But he always had the cupboard full. I mean, it was always loaded.
So Calipari is the kind of guy that it was just time. Like it wasn't. And as a Kentucky fan, I'm not saying that as an indictment on Cal. Like I'm not saying that negatively towards him. You know what I mean? But sometimes you just outgrow each other. You just hit that point because when we think about this, and you brought it up earlier, so let me talk about it now. You know, the year was 2018. Kentucky had this guy by the name of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. You might have heard of him. You know, came into the tournament, you know, lower seeded than they should have been, but it is what it is. But in the bracket, everything fell apart. Like, this is how badly the bracket fell apart. Loyola Chicago made the Final Four. You know what I mean? That was the whole Sister Jean year where she was everywhere. You know, rest in peace, Sister Jean. You know what I mean? But that was like one of those things where the bracket was right there in front of Kentucky. You got SGA, you got the talent. Bam Adebayo was on that team. You know what I mean? They should have ran roughshod through that bracket, but they lost to Kansas State, you know, that they had no business losing to. Then, you know, you follow that up a couple of years later. Worst season in Kentucky history, the COVID year, 9-16. You know, then you go lose to a 15 seed. Shout out to Jersey, St. Peter's. You know what I'm saying? Like, it feels a little bit better because, yeah, it feels a little bit better because they went to the Elite Eight at least. But they were a 15 seed that they lost to. And then you talk about Jack Golke all the time in Oakland. So it just reached that fever pitch of, this is not Kentucky basketball. You got to go. So you bring in Mark Pope, who I do think is a good coach. You know, had some good seasons at Utah Valley State, went on over to BYU, came on to Kentucky last year, got us to the Sweet 16. You know, everything's good, but he had a bunch of mid-major players that he was trying to make work. Kobe Bria, for example, you know, one of the best shooters in the country last year. You know, and it just didn't work for last year. So coming into this year, you get into the transfer portal. You know, you still got Otega Oweh. You know, you got Jaden Quaintance, who signed to Kentucky originally, you know, was going to follow Cal to Arkansas, ended up at Ohio State and Arizona State, came back to Kentucky, towards ACL last year, came back for about 2 or 3 games this year, hurt himself again, didn't play the rest of the season. Jalen Lowe from Pitt was supposed to be that steady point guard like Leroy Lamont Butler was last season. He was supposed to be that, but then he got hurt and was out for the season. So you're down 2 of your starting 5, and not just 2 of your starting 5, but your point guard and your big man. This is college basketball. This ain't the NBA. This ain't the NBA where you just go get a Danis Jenkins, who we'll talk about a little bit later.
And they kept bringing that up in the Iowa State game. It was like Kentucky's lack of a ball handling point guard was crippling them. But it was they couldn't get into offensive sets, and then that forces you to kind of You're not playing well offensively, and then Iowa State is just throwing slip screen lob passes from the free throw line extended and just getting
Right.
dunked, and they were just at the rim the whole game. So I think it was kind of but they
Yeah.
mentioned a
So
lot on the broadcast. It was like a lack of a point guard was killing them. And I was like, well, get it to your guy that dropped 35 the other night and tell him get to your spots. Like go Kobe. Like, listen, we're
yeah.
running screens for him because we can't get anything else to work. You got to knock down these shots, and we're gonna live and die with him shooting the ball and fighting for offensive rebounds.
So I'm giving Pope another year. You know what I mean? I don't think this year is on him. Like obviously he had some very bad moments this year, especially in the press conferences. But I think those injuries took the wind out the sails. So you get another year, some more NIL money, and I told you I was going to do this. I want Alex Wilkins from Furman. You know, he impressed the hell out of me against UConn the other day. Like he looks like an NBA player that is stuck at Furman, you know what I mean, for whatever reason. Maybe he wasn't highly recruited coming out of high school or something along those lines, but he's a basketball player, and I will take him on my team. Shout out to Rob Martin from High Point. Sucks that he's a senior because he's only 5'10", so this might have been the last time we saw him. But he went head-to-head with Darius Acuff. He was going back and forth with him like, you want to hit a three? I'm going to hit a three. Oh, you want to get cute around the basket? Watch this finger roll. Like, you know, and it was great TV. But keeping it on coaching for a quick second before we get into our Sweet 16 picks, you know, Brian Hodgkin, USF head coach, turned down Syracuse, and he ended up at Providence. I never thought I would see the day where someone would turn down Syracuse to go to Providence. So Syracuse got rid of Adrian
through the grapevine.
Maybe. So they got rid of Adrian Autry, you know, one of their legacy point guards at head coach. He was the guy that followed the guy that Mr. Logical always talks about. You don't want to be the guy following the guy. He followed Boeheim. So 3 years, he's gone. And in comes Jerry McNamara fresh off that performance against Duke in the first round. Then you got Randy Bennett, St. Mary's. He is now the head coach at Arizona State, replacing Bobby Hurley. You know, Greg McDermott at me and Mr. Logical's, you know, school away from school, Creighton. You know, he steps down. You know, then you got Gerard Calhoun. And this is where Mr. Logical gets mad, and I'm going to let him go real quick. Jared Calhoun, the next head coach of Cincinnati, Mr. Logical. He got that job yesterday. You know what he did on Sunday? He lost to Arizona.
Well, somebody posted something in the Facebook group about a coach. I think it might have been the McNamara post, and I commented on it. God forbid a player does it. We talk all this NIL distraction and diva and spoiled and how you going to leave your team and all of this stuff. When a player leaves, he takes his stuff that he was issued by the team, he packs up his dorm room, and he leaves campus. He doesn't take a coach with him. He doesn't take scholarship power with him. He just takes himself, or she takes herself to another school. Jerry McNamara leaving Siena, I guarantee you, any player that has eligibility left that played all 40 minutes of this basketball game, they're going to get an opportunity to get to Syracuse. His favorite coaches from the Siena staff, not the guy that's going to be next up. I think he'll do him a service and let the guy that's going to be next up, you know, step in and be the head coach there, or however they make the decision. But the assistant coach that he likes, the defensive coordinator coach that he likes, and maybe like the shooting game coordinator that he likes, that guy's coming with him to Syracuse. That guy's family's moving. Or how about the players? Well, I need to bring in some other guys. You might not fit. God forbid they bring in a coach from the outside. All the staff could be gone. But when a player leaves, a player's being selfish. But when a coach leaves, he leaves a real problem in his wake. It doesn't go smooth. So shout out to these coaches for leveraging the sweat of these players and their sweat equity to get themselves in a better position. But I don't want to hear shit when all these guys decide to come back and ask for more NIL money. I don't want to hear shit when these guys decide, you know what? Kentucky does need a point guard. I'm leaving here and I'm going to Kentucky. Or, you know what? I'm sick of this coach here. I want to go to this school for no other reason other than I'm sick of the weather in whatever state I currently live in, and I want to go live in the mountains and play at BYU. Fine, you go to BYU. You don't sit. I don't want any player who gets an opportunity to transfer sitting around thinking, what is my coach going to think? Because if you're at one of these small schools, your coach will take the Michigan State job if it came available this week.
Yeah, so so St. Mary's hired Mickey McConnell, former player, to replace Randy Bennett, and then to finish off my Kentucky rant, this 6-year stretch that we're in right now is the longest streak Kentucky has ever gone without making an Elite Eight. You know what I'm saying? So chew on that for a minute. But anyway, that's enough of that, Mr. Logical. Let's talk about the games that are upcoming. Starting on tomorrow, of course, or I'm sorry, on Thursday, of course. So we're going to talk about this first game because I know what you said you did in your bracket. So are you sticking with the Johnnies to take down the Blue Devils?
Yes. I'm sticking with St. John's. Like you said, that 5 seed is probably more like a 2. They play tough defense. I talked about Boozer. I'm not sure if he is a backpack guy, like, yeah, we're going to take this over. I think the combination of Rick Pitino at coaching is a proof that coaching matters. He has something. Well,
I told you last week, right? Like he's as good of a coach as Coach K. He just doesn't, doesn't have the titles or wasn't around. So,
yeah. So I'm stick with St. John's, even though they, didn't accept me to their master's program.
Well, I'm going to take Duke. I think St. John's is going to give Duke some problems defensively. I just don't know if St. John's can score enough, to pull the upset. We saw this the other day against TCU, 38-34. And then before you blink, Duke has a 20-point lead. Once Duke gets rolling, it's hard to stop. And Isaiah Evans, I think he's the key. Obviously, Caden Boozer, the other Boozer, has been playing well as of late. But I think when Isaiah Evans is on, Duke is just a whole nother monster to deal with. So I'm going with Duke. And then we got Tom Izzo. You brought up Michigan State. Mr. March, as they call him, even though he hasn't won a title since 2000, even though the Big Ten as a conference hasn't won a title since 2000. But, Mr. Logical, the Big Ten does have 6 of these Sweet 16 teams. So maybe this is the year. But can UConn put the brakes on Tom Izzo?
I mean, obviously, they can. I'm just sticking with my pick and my pick integrity. I'm going to stick with Michigan State. I don't know. The Big Ten plays a couple of different brands of basketball, but it's always very physical. They always have a big, it's always just like a big, tough white guy in the middle. It seems like every Big Ten team just seems to have that. I know, like Purdue had a big in the middle. Obviously, Michigan has their guy. Like
Purdue and Nebraska out here, the exciting whites, right?
Yeah, they are just making things happen with these big, tall white guys. So it's like, I like Michigan State. Like I said, that was my pick originally, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, so I picked the UConn. I had this matchup in my bracket. I picked the UConn. But I'm not feeling so great about it. UConn has been, and this is my fault. It's all on me because, I've been looking at Danny Hurley, the ultimate motivator, the champion, the winner, and it's kind of what I like to call Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady syndrome, where it's like once they lose a game, you're going to get about 2 weeks of just ass kickings out of them. So when UConn lost that Big East championship game to St. John's, I was like, oh, Hurley is about to explode and UConn's going to come out with their hair on fire. And if Furman had a dude that, another tall dude they might win that game. Reed ended up with 31 and 27, first person since Elvin Hayes to pull off that feat in the NCAA tournament. UConn just hasn't looked the part all season long. So I was shocked that they got a 2 seed just off of the strength of how they've looked throughout most of the season. You know what I mean? But hey, what up, Mike? But you know what I'm saying? So, but I'm going to stick with it. Same thing you said. I'm going to stick with the pick integrity here. I'm taking UConn. Yeah. So so in my bracket, I had Duke against UConn in the Elite Eight. I'm sticking with it. I picked UConn in that game, if it happens, but I'm not so sure now. Duke's, like I said, Isaiah Evans, you know what I mean? Like, hey, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how I feel about referring to people as Dukies either. That just, that ain't healthy. But we got Iowa, Nebraska. My Cornhuskers.
Got both of these wrong. I got both.
I got both of these wrong. Yeah.
I have Florida Vanderbilt in this matchup, and
I had Florida Nebraska.
3 points the other way, and I'd have been right. Good thing I wasn't gambling on this because I think I got 12 of the 16 in the final in the Sweet 16. So a point or two the other way for either game. And I would have my Florida Vanderbilt matchup, SEC love. But we're gonna go Big Ten love. The Florida coach had an interesting strategy. I guess their intentions was to foul after that made basket. They just couldn't catch up to the guy because they didn't want to give up the 3. And according to analytics, it says analytics, you put the guy on the line and maybe they miss one, so you put the pressure on. I'm like, I don't like it because I think you can make a mistake and you're trying to foul and the guy gets a 3-point shot off anyway. And now you're intentionally fouling. Now you foul the 3.
Whatever happened to just playing defense?
I just figured if you play defense, run them off the 3-point line. I would say give up the 2-point jumper versus fouling up 2. Because if you foul up 2, you're just kind of hoping the guy misses the free throws. But I'm like, I'd rather
look at some point when you're playing sports,
jump shot.
At some point when you're playing sports, you just gotta shake the other dude's hand if he hits a shot. Like we talk about this all the time. Harrison Barnes against the Cavs. The Cavs intentionally, let him shoot. If he makes those shots, because you can't let Steph shoot, you can't let Clay shoot. If he makes those shots, you shake his hand. You know what I mean? And same thing the Spurs did back in the day. Boris Diaw playing off of LeBron. Like, you know what? If he makes that shot, shake his hand. But what he ain't going to do is get to this basket. You know what I mean? And just play defense. And, but the side note of this, the funny part about this is I can never say his name right, but Alvaro Figueres, the guy that actually hit the 3-point shot for Iowa.
Yeah.
He shouldn't even have been in the game. He threw a punch earlier when they had the round up on the floor. I don't want to hear this peanut. No, this is not football. You don't do the peanut Tillman in basketball. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. He should have been out of the game.
I think he might have caught himself. I think he realized, when his hand was up, he was like, and then went for the ball.
If he want to go do that in Kinnick Stadium on a Saturday, you know what I'm saying? Go do that. But don't do that on the basketball court. Correct, Mike. Sounds like coaching to me, Todd Golden. Just play defense. You know what I mean? But Iowa, it's always tough after games like this. You wonder, very big pause here, you wonder if teams shot their load. You know what I'm saying? Because you went out against the defending national champion. And Iowa won that game. This was not one of those, Florida lost that game. Florida made a mistake that gave the game away. Iowa was in control of that game more than not. Florida made their run in the second half as the defending national champion is supposed to. But Iowa just kept fighting and eventually got that. I mean, when I saw how open he was on that shot, I had to think to myself he was going to miss it. You know what I mean? Like, just because he was so open.
Because of the strategy. I think if you just, like I talked about in the St. Mary's, Kentucky game, the guy hit the 3 and celebrated all the way from where he hit the three inside the 3-point line on the other side of the court. I think if you just readjust, play defense, you're at the half court line, then you can stop this guy from dribbling up the court. Well, Florida was trying to do with that foul, they ended up trailing the guy. So that meant the other defenders had to step up to stop the point guard who's coming downhill with the ball. Like I said, because they perfectly timed the pass and left him open in the corner. If they were all back at half court, they could have just set up in their 2-3 or whatever best defensive set they wanted to go with that way, because you want to run them off the 3-point line, set up in your 2-3. Maybe you give a little half court press, because especially if you aren't afraid of fouling, that gives you an advantage, because you're like, we can play hard defense, and if we get the foul, we get the foul. But to just have that be the sole strategy, it threw everybody out of position, and that's why that guy was literally wide open in the corner, the shortest three on the floor, which is probably like 19 feet 9 inches in the corner, and he was right on that line. So you gave him the shortest opportunity to go up one in that moment. So I think sometimes analytics.
So who you got winning?
Well, like you said, I feel the same way about both of these teams. Big Ten teams don't normally score a lot of points. So who gets to 70? Nebraska or Iowa? I'm going to go out on the limb and just say Iowa.
All right. So I'm going to take Nebraska. Of course, this is the rubber match. On
a single pick.
This is the rubber match. Iowa got Nebraska earlier this year during the blackout, 57-52 up in Iowa City. But then Nebraska.
That's what I'm saying. Like, who's gonna get the 70 points?
The second time they played. Well, the second time they played, it went to overtime. Nebraska won 84-75. What does scare me as a Cornhusker, is in that game against Florida, Bennett Sturts, went 5 for 16, 0 for 9 from 3. That ain't happening again. You're going to get the best of Bennett Sturts. So, I think, and the one thing that Iowa does have, is Ben McCollum, the head coach. He's just a winner, 4 national titles at a lower level, in tournaments. He's something like 34-8 overall in his career. So tournaments are what he does, but at the same time, Nebraska has Fred Hoiberg on the other side, so I think I'm going to go with Nebraska very slightly in this game, 2 to 4 points come down to the wire. Then you got Illinois and Houston. This was another game that I had in my bracket, and I was nervous about it because before the tournament started, I was heavy on Illinois. Keaton Wagler, I like him a lot. Expect to see him in the lottery in the NBA draft. Illinois has become this hotbed for all these Slavics. They got Peja Stojakovic's son. Last year they had Yashionis, and they got more. This year. So, but I just think Houston has just hit another level during this tournament. After A&M took out St. Mary's, I thought style of play would give Houston some problems, and Houston put that thing on them. I think Houston knows what's in front of them. Florida's out the way now. That was my regional final. I had Houston over Florida. Now that Florida's out of the way, a lot of Kingston Fleming, probably another top 5 to top 7 NBA draft pick. JoJo Tugler, Milos Uzan, Emmanuel Sharp, all 3 of them on that team last year that played for the national title. They know what's in front of them, and I think the experience is going to swallow the Illini.
Yeah, I got Houston as well. Like I said, I like the pedigree. I like the fact that they just played. I like the hunger aspect of it, and I just felt like they were just the better team in this part of the bracket anyway. And I had them taking out Illinois, and I had them beating Vanderbilt. But like I said, obviously Vanderbilt didn't make it that far. But yeah, I'm big on Houston. Like I said, they're my Final Four pick.
Hey, Arizona fans, remember me? All the time talking about how you guys don't ever meet the expectation People pick you for the Final Four, national titles every single year. Arizona, your road stops here. Darius Acuff is just on a mission right now. Billy Richmond, the heart and soul of the Razorbacks, Brazil, Malik Thomas. Like the one thing I will give Arizona is that if this comes down late, if this is a game that's going to be decided by a possession or two, they got the right guy in Jaden Bradley on their team. Big 12 player of the year. He's one of those clutch guys that never met a moment that he didn't want to meet. So if it comes down to that, then yes. Where Arizona has the advantage as well is, I agree with you, Mike. I was just about to say it too. I would take Acuff number one myself. You know what I mean? But I think that Arizona is going to give him trouble in a way that we haven't seen him have lately. Keep your eye on Koa Pete as well. He missed a couple of games in the Big 12 season, but he's back now. So this is going to be an up and down game. I wouldn't be surprised if this is another 90 to 86 type game like Arkansas just had with High Point. The problem is that Arizona is so physical on the inside that could put Arkansas in foul trouble early. But I'm going to go with Arizona. I'm sorry, with Arkansas. Keep my pick integrity because I had Arkansas in the Final Four. So I'm just going to roll with it.
I'm doing the opposite. I'm rolling with Arizona because I had them in the Final Four. But obviously, like I said, we talk about the one and dones. Some guys are just special. Some guys are just able to capture lightning in the bottle in these moments. This might be Acuff's run. Like we talk about his, getting the signature shoe and having the photo shoot and the meeting with
Allen Iverson
co-signed.
yeah.
So it's like that could be the gift and the curse. Could that be the piece that just puts him at such a mental state that he's a man amongst boys, or does that put like pressure on him? But if that locks him in even more, then yeah, my pick for Arizona being in the Final Four is gonna go kaboom. But as like I said, for as far as pick integrity, because I had Arizona BYU my Elite Eight, and we saw how that worked out.
Yeah, and I told you that 11 seeded Texas was going to beat BYU. So this is a matchup that I had in my bracket. Purdue and Texas. I wanted to pick Gonzaga because me, I'm all about the storyline. And if we would have got that game, Tommy Lloyd, the Arizona head coach, came from Gonzaga. So, I wanted that matchup, coach against pupil and all that kind of stuff. But Texas, saying, yes, sir. There you go, Mike. Saying Texas, their defense, and the cute part about this is I could still get my matchup because if Texas beats Purdue and Arizona wins, Texas head coach Sean Miller got in trouble at Arizona during all the, Adidas stuff and all that whole situation. Yeah, so we could get that matchup. Purdue, is one of those teams. I just never know what to expect from them. When I was a young kid, my dad always told me the Falcons and the Indianapolis Colts, you never know what they're going to do. And you know what I mean? And that's how I feel about Purdue. You just never know. Purdue could walk out here and win this game by 15 points. Saying Lawyer and the point guard, Braden Smith. Lawyer and Braden Smith controlling the game. That very well could happen. But Texas got athletes, and I think this might be more of a low-scoring game. So, against my will, I'm going to pick Purdue, but I think it's going to be closer than that 7.5.
Well, I had Purdue losing to BYU. This 11-seeded Texas. I like their big inside. I think he's like substantially bigger than anyone that's trying to guard him. Offensive rebound. Can't shoot free throws. On the BYU game, I don't know why BYU let anybody else catch the inbound pass when they were fouling at the end down the stretch. I'm like, that guy should be getting fouled every possession. I would have put in the walk on just to foul him, just so I wouldn't waste the foul for one of my other players because he was doing his. I think they said he was shooting like 54% on the season, and I think he had missed like 6 or 7 in a row down the stretch. So I think Purdue, smart coach, well-coached team, if they're in that 71, 68 range late in the game, I think they'll employ that strategy. And if they get him to the line, like I said, he was struggling first round game, and they had the lead. So
yeah,
I'm gonna take Purdue, and let's get an Arizona Purdue Elite 8, 1 versus 2.
So I didn't have Alabama here, but both of us had Michigan reaching the national title game. You had them winning, I had them losing. This is one of those matchups, right? That Alabama is one of those teams that you just look at and you go, please don't be on tonight. Because when Alabama is on, they can take down anybody. And that's even without Aiden Holloway. Nate Oates is a damn good coach offensively. The problem is they always leave themselves exposed defensively. And Yaxel Lindenborg, I've been waiting all year to see the hype. He's been playing these first couple of tournament games looking like the player that I thought he would be at the start of the season. I like Elliot Cadeau, so that matchup with him and LeBaron Philon is going to be something to watch. LeBaron's another lottery NBA draft pick for those of you tracking out there. So, I'm going to take Michigan, but this is going to be dependent on Alabama. If Alabama's on, I got Michigan by 6. If Alabama's off, Michigan can win this game by 30.
I have Alabama, Michigan in this matchup. Like I said, I went pretty chalk with a lot of my picks. And it's kind of turned out to make me look better as a prognosticator than I actually am. But like I said, same thing. I like Michigan. I like you said, Yaxel. I just feel like he has like an NBA body. He just looks a little bigger than anyone that's trying to guard him.
Well, yeah, because he's 23 years old.
That helps. And then the big they have down low, great passer, looks to pass. Yaxel's a great cutter, finishes tough at the rim, maybe because he is 4 or 5 years older than some of his competitors. But yeah, I like Michigan here. Yeah, but I felt like Michigan was going to make this run all year long. When they were just basically blowing everybody out, they had that close game against Penn State, I think, while we were doing the show live. But for the most part, I think Michigan's been one of those teams that's like, hey, we are prime to compete for a national championship, and I don't think that stops on the 27th.
Yeah, I feel like every time Paulo Banchero passes the ball, he turns into like a 4-year-old, and he's like, oh, man.
Why did I give up my toy?
So you got Tennessee and Iowa State. I definitely didn't have this matchup. I had Iowa State there. These are 2 of the teams that I brought up earlier, and Mike, you wasn't here, so I'm going to repeat it again. 10 of these Sweet 16 teams have never won a title. 3 of them have never made a Final Four. Here's 2 of them, Tennessee and Iowa State, the other Nebraska, of course. So, Mr. Logical, this game is going to be one of those games that people are going to hate. They're going to turn the channel. This is going to take me back to the early 90s. UMass and Temple 49-47. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I think this game is going to be defensive as hell. Tennessee has some better shooters than they generally have. They've impressed me in this tournament. What I haven't been counting on is I'm still waiting for, because I brought him up at the beginning of the season. I've been waiting for Nate Ament to actually take over games, and because I think of him as a lottery pick as well, but he doesn't seem to quite have that just yet. So out of these guys, he might have to come back another year. He might be the one. Iowa State, without their best player the other day, laid waste to my Wildcats, but I'm repping the jersey anyway. I think Iowa State wins. TJ Otzelberger is one of the coaches that never gets the recognition that I feel he deserves. if Kentucky does decide to move on from Mark Pope after next season, TJ Otzelberger better be one of the first calls that they make. I'm taking Iowa State to win this game. It's going to be a close game, and I'm going to call it something along the lines of 57-51. It's going to be, I think, real low scoring.
You think it's going to be that low? I just felt like Iowa State in the game against Kentucky, I just felt like they executed their offense very well. They had a poor first half. I think they only hit like 2. I think they took the lead on the like one of the final shots of the half, and I think that was like their second or third 3 that they had hit. And Clark Kellogg said at the halftime break, he was like, "This is one of those games where I can see Iowa State winning by 20 because Kentucky shot the ball better than expected, and Iowa State shot the ball worse than expected. And if you just bounce out the law of averages, that it's going to flip on its head, and Iowa State was going to be able to pull away in the second half, which they end up doing." I thought offensively, they just looked like everybody who had the ball in their hand looked like they knew what the scoring play was. Because sometimes you'll see guys out there who just know, I'm catching the ball over here, I'm passing it here, and I'm setting the screen. And it was like they're not even looking at the rim. I just felt like Iowa State just had guys that just Kentucky, that guy Torrey, a Kentucky defender, they had a little slip screen and they were supposed to switch it. He looked the wrong way. Torrey went right to the hoop. They ran like the little screen, like I said, free throw line extended. The big just rolled.
Yeah, Rick Barnes isn't going to allow that. I'm not a Rick Barnes guy, but you know what I mean. He's not going to allow that.
You don't think like that? I mean, I just like I said, I just felt like the offense had a great flow to it, and it had a flow no matter who was.
No, if it's one thing
to the big, I just felt like they had like a great chemistry.
No, if it's one thing you're going to get from a Rick Barnes,
you think you just the ball pressure is going to be too much?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of defense here. You know what I mean? So there you go. You know what I mean? Let's go around the association. Cover your ears, Mike. You know, said we got Kevin Durant here. You know, just became the 5th all-time leading scorer in NBA in NBA history, passing Michael Jeffrey Jordan to do so. And just to give you the update, Mr. Logical, coming into tonight, he is 1,309 points behind Kobe Bryant for number 4. He's 4,594 behind Karl Malone, and he's 6,053 from Kareem. Is there any chance he catches Karl Malone?
We did this math a few years ago on this show. We counted all the games he had missed, his averages, because I think if he because he missed a full season with Brooklyn, he missed 40 plus games with a couple of different times. Yeah. So, and you're saying that can he catch Karl Malone?
Yeah, can he catch Karl Malone? So 4,594 points. Because I figure he's going to catch Kobe. He's going to catch Kobe.
That's two full seasons. While I'm thinking about it, I'm just kind of do the math real quick. He's like a 27 points per game guy, right?
Yeah, around 26 or so. Yeah, I think he's going to pass Kobe probably 30 games into next year. Maybe a little less.
27 points for 82 games, which we know he's not going to play, is 22-14.
Yeah, from what I was reading, it looks like he's more around 17 to 1,800 these days a season. You know, he's going to be 38, so you know, time is of the essence. You know, so I think he gets Kobe. I don't know if he quite gets to Malone.
Well, if he plays one more season, so the rest of the season and and he decides not to retire this offseason, which he said he loves basketball, so I doubt it. Yeah, I think he'll pass Kobe, but missing all those games early on in his career where he could have easily averaged 31 points per game. Because we talked about it when LeBron was passing Kareem, like Durant probably could have been.
He would have been on his ass.
Yeah, he would have been on his heels. He would have been second. I think he'd be second already. If we just factored in because he's missed. I think he missed at least. We could go off the top of our head and say 200 games.
Well, yeah, because we were talking about how he hasn't played 60 games, the last 5 or 6 seasons or something like that.
So we figured he missed 82 full games. So he's missed 200 games in his career. If he would have played those 200 games, that's 5,400 points at 27.
Yeah, he's missed. Yeah, throughout his career, starting from the top, he's missed 2 and then 8, played 82, missed 4, missed 16, played 81 twice, played 27. That was the year in Oklahoma City you were talking about. Missed 10, missed 20, missed 14, missed 4. Then didn't play in Brooklyn. He played 35 his first year in Brooklyn, 55 the year after that, 47, 39, 8. Then he played 75, and then last year 62. This year he's played 68 games. So yeah, he's missed a crap ton of time that he would probably be already on Karl Malone's heels right now.
He would be on LeBron's heels for sure.
He would be on Kareem's, yeah.
Over 400 regular season games missed for Kevin Durant.
It's a shame, that what his legacy is going to turn into. But anyway, Mr. Logical, the Lakers won 9 out of 10. They just lost last night, to the Detroit Pistons at Detroit. Danis Jenkins with 30 points to include the dagger that closed the game out. Were we wrong about the Lakers? Are they contenders for real?
I still feel I think they are going to be good because they have 2 great players and one guy kind of coming into his own in Austin Reeves with given the opportunity he's given. So I think they're going to play well game in and game out. The problem is they also have liabilities that will get exploited in a 7-game series. That's the problem for the Lakers. LeBron is only so much LeBron is going to be able to give you at his age, and especially with the way they play with Luka taking 29 to 30 shots, Austin Reeves getting about 20, getting 20 plus, and LeBron somewhere around 16 to 17 shots a game. Playmakers outside of those 3 guys don't exist. I think Marcus Smart has the passion to want to be a playmaker, but I think he's likely to dribble the ball out of bounds in an important time. 3 minutes left in the game's in the balance. I think he's more likely to make a mistake than he is to make a great play. I don't like the fact that they don't have a role player that kind of like leads, like a 6th man that really leads them off the bench, that allows the stars to kind of settle the way Boston has Peyton Pritchard. Just like Peyton Pritchard, can get you 30 points off of 14 shots. Like a guy like that, I think having those kind of elements is essential.
Yeah, I'm not picking them, Mike. So be happy. No, like I think that they're better than I gave them credit for, or they will be at least. Like we'll get into the playoff matchups later, but right now they're matched up with Houston. And if I'm the Lakers, I'll take that all day. Like no Steven Adams, to contend with on the boards. I think that's the one team out of the bunch up, if you will, that the Lakers would want to play. Like maybe they could give Denver a run because Denver's been a little achy lately. You know what I mean? But I don't think the Lakers would want to see Minnesota in a series. I don't think. No. And if they get out the first round, I don't think they want OKC or
their second round matchup puts them at such a deficit because I think everybody else just plays with greater balance. The Lakers are top heavy. They're like Deontay Wilder. They have a mean right hand, but it's like, if that doesn't hit, if that doesn't land, what do you got? Like, if it doesn't land for the first 3, like if it doesn't land, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna adjust? Like, yeah, Mike, I give you that, but like if Rui gets the ball if Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves are on the floor at the same time, and Rui gets the ball, and the guy closes out hard on Rui on the 3-point line, does he have the freedom to put the ball on the floor and attack the rim? I don't think he does. I think they reset, they kick it back out. Like if he can't get that 3 off when he gets past it to him in the corner, he resets, they get it back to Luka, and they run something else. I don't think he has the freedom to be like, oh, pump fake, 2 dribble pull up. And it's like, yo, why are you taking a 17-foot 2-pointer when we need to take this 22-foot 3-pointer from the corner? Like, why are you deviating from the system? Like, that's not what you give us. And I think in a tight game where that might be the shot you need, scores 88, 86, and you need this shot, 6 seconds on the shot clock, and they close out on the 3-point line, and he has to pull up, he won't do it. He'll kick to Luka, and Luka will shoot a long-ass 3, and maybe it goes in, maybe it doesn't.
So let's go down Stats Boulevard for a second. So the Lakers are 13-4 since the All-Star break. Luka Doncic, Con Knipple is the leader right now in 3-pointers coming into tonight with 243. Luka's only 5 3-pointers behind him. LeBron last week became the oldest player to get a triple-double, and he just passed Robert Parrish in all-time games played. The Lakers are 22-7 this season in clutch games. You know what I'm saying? So same thing as, the clutch that we talk about with players, but just encompassing the whole team. So they lead the league in clutch net rating. Now, this is the good news for the Lakers and people that support them. The last 2 teams that have led the NBA in clutch net rating are last year's Pacers and the Mavericks before that. So 2 teams that made the finals. You know what I'm saying? So there you go. DeAndre Ayton has realized that he's not that guy. He came out the other day and said something along the lines of that. So I think that's a good thing. Marcus Smart has been an asset, and I think come playoff time, he will help defensively, if nothing else. He will be able to, like, if they match up with, say, OKC, for example, he'll chase SGA around, make life a little hard for him. So the Lakers do have that. So I don't want to make it sound like the Lakers have no chance in hell.
If I'm a head coach, I think beating second round matchup, because I think the first round, if they get Houston seems to be lacking like the toughness, whatever that you need, and I think they can beat Houston. But so if we go 1-8, so 3, so the second round, say we go chalk and 1, 2, 3, 4, and you get Spurs, Lakers. You get Spurs, Lakers in the second round. Maybe youth and inexperience on the Spurs part is their Achilles heel. But I think the availability of a dynamic player like Wemby, I think the young talent like Steph Castle, I think the speed of De'Aaron Fox, I think the speed at which San Antonio can play the youth could also help them as well. So that's the piece. I don't know, like the counter punch for the Lakers, I don't think exists. I think they have to just stay on their.
Well, I think that for the Lakers to be a true contender, and by true contender, I'm talking about making the Western Conference Finals. I think that they have to. Everything has to go right all the time. You know what I mean? For the Lakers to make it that far. And I'm still waiting, and I brought this up last week or last time we talked about the Lakers. I still don't know if Austin Reeves has had the type of playoff series that inspires confidence in me to think that he's going to take up, because, you can't rely on LeBron anymore, especially when the games start to condense a little bit. So you might get a 21 point, 8 rebound, 5 assists, whatever it is, from LeBron in a playoff game. But can I get that for him over the course of a series if Austin Reeves is having an off night.
I don't know if you're getting 23 and a half, 6 and 6 out of LeBron in a series versus.
And you might not need to. And you might not need to. You know what I mean? But I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of I think Austin Reeves needs to step it up. Now, he's been able to do that during the regular season. He's been great this season. But I got to see it in the playoffs before I can go that far to say this is a team that we better be on the lookout for. That's what it is for me.
You said it perfectly. You said that everything has to go right for the Lakers. And I think that works in regular season matchups because you're playing Orlando today, you're playing Detroit tomorrow, then you're flying back to California and you're getting the Kings, and then you're getting Portland Friday and Sunday. Like, yeah, all 4 of those games can be won because this was all different teams, different dynamics, different players, so forth and so on. But if you got to match up with the team, and like we can say right now, they don't have a 6-man. They don't have anybody else that they can trust that comes off the bench that can, Mike with this HG, that they can trust and rely on to give guys a break. Hence why last year and against Minnesota, the starters played the entire second half. That's not a winning formula at the NBA level. Like, you need to be able to go to a Hauser, Schwarzenegger, whatever the guy's name is, and a Peyton Pritchard in moments in games, like what Boston can do, what OKC can do. The Lakers never really been able to address that. For whatever reason, I don't know why, or they just couldn't find the right fit. But yeah, I can't see a team literally seeing their starting lineup and thinking to themselves, "Oh, we can't figure this out."
So speaking of the San Antonio Spurs, you know, you funny, Mike. Mike brought it up, but saying, let me go ahead and go there. Here's another one for you, Mr. Dallas. So the Spurs, since the All-Star break, 16-2. You know the crazy part about that? They haven't even gained a game on OKC because OKC has gone 15-1 since the All-Star break. So they're still in the same spot that they were, at the time of this. So, I mean, at this point, I can't help but think that we're on a collision course. You know what I'm saying? I think we're on a collision course. Spurs, OKC, they might just run into each other in the Western Conference Finals here. I saw Wemby making his MVP case, and he brought up some great things because, my rule is I'm not giving, MVP to no dude on a minutes restriction. Well, then Wemby came back and told 2-5, like, hey, when we talk about MVP, we don't give defense enough attention. You know what I'm saying? Then on top of that, offense is more than scoring points. Absolutely right on both accounts. Get off that minutes restriction and we'll have a conversation. But Dylan Harper got his first start the other night. 24 points, looking the part. Like, San Antonio is just riches upon riches. And they're the one team that probably can, go man for man with OKC. Because, we talk about Boston. They got Jason Tatum back. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like, when you think of how good Boston is, it's because they jack a lot of threes, not because they're necessarily all these great players per se. They jack a lot of threes, Mr. Logical.
I think Boston's strength
JJ's a good coach.
They have the players and the philosophy of shooting threes. Because I think every team wants to play the way that Boston plays. I think every team wants to play the way that OKC plays or the way San Antonio plays. It's just you realize I don't have 9, 10, and 11 guys that I can put out on the floor any given of these 82 games. OKC can start the first quarter with their starters. A guy needs a break, or they put a guy like, all right, we're going to pull you at 9, 10 minutes. And then we're gonna sit and they can put in 3 or 4 guys with SGA and still run the offense effectively.
But check Boston, it out. Listen to this.
Boston can take Tatum out and they can put, they could put Peyton Pritchard, Hauser, those other guys, Ron Harper Jr.
Listen to this. So Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum has been back for probably less than 15 games, right? Boston still averages 42 threes a game. You know what I'm saying? Like, without him playing half the year. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, look, there's only one team in the NBA right now that's just under 30 3-point attempts a game, and that's 29.9. That's the Sacramento Kings. But like, there are every team in the league, takes 33s a game. Boston, Golden State, Charlotte, Portland, Phoenix, Cleveland, and Chicago take 40 plus. You know what I mean? So like, they're jacking. I don't care what you say. They're jacking.
The Bulls taking more than 40 is jacking threes because they're 12th in the East. The Celtics are second. They are taking threes. It's a difference because they can put 4 guys out there with Tatum, or they can put 4 guys out there with Brown that came off the bench, and they can rest 4 starters. That is I think the league is shifting and everything else. We could just be star heavy and heavy on your role players, but it's a lot of threes. The league shoots a lot of threes already, but like, I think Boston has the right players for it.
Here's another one for you, Mike. Before you start cashing checks with your mouth that your ass can't cash, you know what I'm saying? OKC, SGA, J-Dub, Chet Holmgren, out of this whole NBA season, and J-Dub just came back again, out of this whole NBA season, they've played a total of 300 minutes together. We ain't even seen the best of OKC yet. Just keep that in consideration. Break up the Atlanta Hawks. 14-2 since the All-Star break. They are in the 6th seed now, trying to avoid the play-in. There are 4 teams within that 6 to 10 range, all separated by 2.5 games. So this one is coming down to the wire, ladies and gentlemen. So Atlanta 9-1 in their last 10. How about this? Mr. Kuminga, right? 32% from 3-point range when he was with Golden State this year. So far with the Hawks, 47%. Since the All-Star break, Nikhil Walker-Alexander, just in case y'all forgot, that's SGA's cousin. Since the All-Star break, 21-8. You know what I'm saying? How's that for your role player? They got Trae Young out of town, and they focus on defense, 3-and-D. That's the Atlanta Hawks right now. They ain't going to win a playoff series, but you might not want to play them. And then before I get to the other thing, Mr. Logical, our guy, friend of the show, Cam Thomas, waived by the Milwaukee Bucks. Hopefully this ain't it for him in the NBA.
It can't be. It can't be because he can put the ball in the hoop. Sometimes you just gotta let a guy do what he does.
Hey.
He can score the rock. That's your 6th man right there. That's the guy you want. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if it's attitude or if it's just expectation, but like, I want a guy that comes into the gym ready to shoot. The movement's not too big. Like, put him in, let him run your second unit. Like, listen, this is the offense we're running. We shoot a lot of threes. We want a lot of points. It's going through you. Hey, you guys slide to the hoop, get it out the net. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what do you want from a player.
I might be ready to wave my white flag.
For who?
For the Nuggets. So when the Nuggets won the title back in 2023, they came into the playoffs limping. They had lost a bunch of games they shouldn't have coming down the stretch. People were out on them. I stuck with them and said they were going to win the title. They won the title. But this year, it's tough, man. Jamal Murray, his shoulder doesn't look right. Like, I think he's probably going to hurt himself. Jokic is doing things that he doesn't normally do. He's turning that rock over. And I know the rule, you dribble a lot, you're going to have a lot of turnovers, but he generally doesn't. He looks out of sync. You got the biggest issue of all is probably Mike Malone isn't there. You know what I mean? And with Mike Malone came accountability, stability, and all the other illities. It's like he was like the basketball version of Jesse Jackson, with the emancipation of the organization is the proclamation of my dedication. That was, that was Mike Malone for the Denver Nuggets. He would get in their faces. He would yell at them. He would this guy just, I just can't with this. Anyway, so I brought up Danish Jenkins, 30 last night. But Mr. Logical, let's talk about the NBA draft lottery for a second. Because my Washington Wizards have one win since the All-Star break. Their win is against the Indiana Pacers, who do not have a win since the All-Star break. But as we look at this, I'm going to ask you a simple question. And, guys in the comments, give me your answers. Feel free to play along. So we're looking at the top 14. That's your NBA draft lottery. So as soon as this stupid ad gets out of my way, which team needs the number one draft pick the most?
Needs it, as far as an individual or?
Yeah, no, just which team is in the most dire strait that they need this number one pick more than the other teams, and which players should they take at number one?
Oh my God. I'm looking at Indiana because I think that would drive up the excitement of another Eastern Conference team in that mix that you currently have. Detroit, Boston, the Knicks, the Cavs. I think you throw AJ DeBonsa.
The Pacers finally got a win. Never mind. But go ahead.
With the Pacers and Halliburton coming back, I think that throws him right in that mix. I think that's an immediate impact because it's not a rebuild.
Okay.
It allows the number one pick to just really just kind of fall into the lap of a fortunate team that had a great season last year. Like I said, Tyrese Halliburton doesn't get injured. I think they win Game 7 to have this terrible year, and they get immediately rewarded. I'm not sure what the AD Trae Young situation is in Washington. I don't know if it's tenable. Brooklyn needs a star, but they just been so poorly managed. They just
okay, Homer.
I think Golden State. If I'm thinking about a team out west, I think Golden State. If somehow they got the Dallas treatment in NFL to them, I think that would be huge, at least for a market. But as far as the top 5, I would say Sacramento, because I think they need their team to be exciting or they're going to get moved. So I'm going to say Sacramento, number one pick, get AJ DeBonsa, and hopefully you can turn it around. Because I think they're probably in the most dire straits. I know that I heard somebody say something about Memphis. Someone said they should move them to Nashville. But
yeah, that was old Stephen A.
Sacramento. Yeah, I'm gonna say Sacramento.
And hey, look, I gotta
think if they have one more bad year, they're going to Vancouver. They're out of Sacramento.
Vancouver
bad year.
Hey, so I gotta say this real quick.
Northern Cali fans.
I give Stephen A. a lot of I give him a lot of shit, man. But that whole you can't fuck with me, Jay. Get him. No, I'm gonna go with New Orleans. Because I think that New Orleans is one of these guys away from making a little bit of a leap. I like Derek Queen.
For them to be one, you want the ball to fall to one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Derek Queen, Jeremiah Fears, perfect number. He's number 0. So, saying no 0, saying you can't fuck with me, Jay. Not even a little bit. You know what I mean? But They fired Willie Green, so they have the interim coach, Borrego. So we'll see if they go somewhere else with coach. They got DeJounte Murray back now. You know what I mean? So if I could see New Orleans getting a Debancha, if you will, replacing that kind of Brandon Ingram scoring, but a little bit more consistent, hopefully, then I could see New Orleans being in a playoff type situation next year.
What's
Memphis,
happen, right?
What's that?
You know what's going to happen, right?
What?
He went to a prep high school in Utah. He went to BYU, and Utah's been sitting players. Oh,
you talking
February.
rigged?
Yeah, he's going to Utah.
Okay. I'll keep my eye on it. Brooklyn, you brought up. They got Yegor Damon, who's been a lot better than I thought he would be. I'm loving Nolan Traore. So I think Brooklyn has some pieces. I don't know if either one of them will ever be a superstar, but they got some good stuff going on. Utah went out and got Jaren Jackson Jr. to pair with Laurie. Ace Bailey has been killing it lately. And actually, let me pull this up real quick because I had something that was interesting about Ace Bailey. And it put things in perspective. Oh, no, I actually think I deleted it. But it was basically a bunch of people who he's younger than. You know what I mean? And it's just like, don't give up on these guys too soon. You know what I mean? Like Ace Bailey has been putting up 30-point games more consistently recently. How about Dallas? Kyrie Irving coming off an injury.
They could not get it.
Anthony Davis gone. Hey, I'm just saying.
It's like, listen, like I said, Mike's brought up the rig thing. Like I said, I don't think it's rigged. I just think that, Utah is in the mix. And we've seen it over the last few years, the teams with the best odds.
Hold on. No,
the teams with the worst records haven't gotten the number one pick.
No, if you want to talk about,
I'm not
being
sure
rigged,
if AJ Debonta is guaranteed to be the number one pick either. I think Darren Peterson still might be the number one pick. We got to see if Acuff makes a run in this tournament that kind of moves him up.
If Sacramento gets the number one pick, they're taking Acuff. But I also think that if we're going to go the rigged route, then Milwaukee has to get the number one pick. Said if they're going to end up trading Giannis, so like,
or do they pair the number one pick with Giannis? Does Giannis say, "Hey, I like this Acuff guy," or "I like Darren Peterson"? No, he's out there.
No, Giannis don't. No, Giannis don't. No. Yeah, like Giannis is getting to that LeBron point. I ain't got time for you to develop. Like, you know what I mean? Because Giannis is in his 30s now. You know what I mean? Like, maybe if he was still 27, 28, you know what I mean? Something along those lines, maybe. Memphis would be a good one if they could find a way to get off of Ja Morant. But, I don't know. Said if that's going to happen or not.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the place where the number one pick can go. I think of these top teams, I think the likelihood of Miami getting that, it would be crazy. So I would say the top 5. I think Indiana would have the most immediate impact because Indiana is a good team. They're going to get their stars back. They probably rested more guys post-injury that who were injured this year because of the fact that it's like, listen, what's the point of bringing you back from this strain this week? We can wait till next week. We're losing games anyway. We're going to need you next year when Hallie comes back. Like, because Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, a couple weeks before Halliburton did?
Yeah, probably.
And I think DeJounte Murray did the same thing. Yeah, and he's
Dame
not
Lillard.
Back, so they're probably, Dame Lillard. But Dame didn't know he was going to sit out the whole time, but he was good enough to shoot in the 3-point contest, so he's healing. I think Indiana would be a good spot because that'll work immediately, and that way the number one pick won't go into this oblivion like we've seen for the last few years, other than Cooper Flagg, but that was an anomaly for Dallas to get that number one pick anyway. When it happened, everyone was like, "This is crazy," and that's when everyone thought it was rigged. But I think
don't forget the Pacers
getting him.
Yeah. Don't forget that they picked up Zubac too. From the Clippers. So you know what I mean. They're ready to rock and roll once Hallie gets back.
Once Hallie gets back, and then you get this young guy off the ball where Mathurin would have been. Now those opportunities go to
you know what? I wonder.
You get.
and this is something that Mike would probably be more adept to answer. I wonder what Cameron Boozer would look like next to Halliburton. Like, I feel like the spacing and the passing, like that offense is just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what Cam's going to give them, as far as point production, but I'm just saying, like, setting up the offense, the spacing, and like just having that ball movement going on.
I think he needs a team like that where like I said, he's probably gonna. I think he's gonna probably measure shorter than 6'9". It's gonna be a lot of like a Bam Adebayo kind of player, where you're big, but you're not a 7-foot big. You're not a 6'11" big. But going to like a ready-made team, like that's probably a spot where if like Miami gets to 6, I don't know if Boozer falls to 6, unless every other team.
No, he's definitely not falling that far.
We need a guard. We need a guard that can score the ball with the spacing that the NBA has. Like, we need a guard that can score the ball that way. But
no, I think that you got. I think that you could probably have DeBoncha go before Boozer. I think Acuff could go before Boozer potentially. I don't know if Darren Peterson. I don't know, man. It's tough. Like, I feel like
it depends on whatever his
had
health
to have hit. Yeah, his stock had to have taken some kind of hit, I would think. And then Caleb Wilson, a lot of NBA people seem to be loving him, even though he didn't get to play in the NCAA tournament. A lot of people like him. I don't think Kingston Flemings, I like him a lot, but I don't think he can jump Boozer. So at worst, I would say Boozer falls to 4 if he falls. I would say 4 at the worst. But possibly
be a player
3.
that Utah would take. His dad used to play there as well. I think he just fits in one of those like ready-made offenses where passing is a key piece of how they run their offense. Especially passing from a big. I mean, you get so many advantages. Like, I don't know why teams went almost so solely away from it. Like, Draymond is literally making a living off of being able to set screens and pass the ball, and friend set another screen so guys can get open shots. Like, he's literally living the NBA dream life, and he doesn't even look at the rim. He plays defense and he sets screens and he passes the ball. He didn't even bring the ball up. Like, somebody else brings it up and just gives it to him. He's like, all right, I'll work from here. Thanks.
All right, I got one more game I want to play before we wrap this up.
All right.
So starting yesterday, the NBA, or actually today, the NBA is meeting to go over the expansion. Seattle and Las Vegas, of course, are the 2 cities on the table to approve the expansion. 2/3 of the league have to vote yes. So 23 out of the 30 teams have to say yes. Who do you think are some teams that would say no to the expansion?
And Seattle and Vegas are the 2 cities that are locked in?
That's what it sounds like.
So we're adding 2 new teams. We're not moving teams. We're just adding 2 new teams.
Right.
Who would say no? Phoenix? Any team in that time zone, the mountain. Well, Vegas technically stays on Pacific time.
Yeah.
So
Whereas
Vegas,
Arizona switches.
Pacific time. Arizona switches. Utah's a mountain time.
What about, you think Portland would be a possible no?
I don't think anybody out west should say no, because it just brings more attention to your division games, because you have 2 new teams, and the NBA has to promote their 2 new teams. So I think you get more games. I'll say Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, New Orleans.
Well,
Memphis.
yeah, Dallas will say no because they want Vegas for themselves.
That's another thing. Like, they want the Vegas slot. So Dallas will say no. I think all the Texas teams will say no. I think New Orleans will vote no. I think Minnesota will vote no. Memphis. So you got to get 20. You got to get 20 out of 30 or 23 out of 30.
You got to get
23 out of 30.
Yeah.
I think those 6, maybe Milwaukee, but I just feel like the Texas teams, because that's prime TV time for them to get those, that central time to kind of like lock in that space. Instead of them now, they got to share it with 2 more West Coast teams. I think all the East Coast teams will be fine with it because it's like you're gonna play so many expansion games. They're probably gonna play a couple extra games in New York just to highlight it. They're gonna have a whole thing when they play Brooklyn, New York, Boston, Philly, just to showcase this new team. So I think the East Coast teams will be fine because I think they'll get a lot of the scheduling will go in their favor. I would say the Texas teams will say no. New Orleans and Memphis, just because I believe people feel like they already kind of lift out.
Well,
And
that's
then maybe
already
Minnesota
5 right there.
Yeah, not Minnesota maybe, but Minnesota has Ant. He's charismatic enough where they're going to keep them on TV.
So
Chicago's kind of afterthought too.
Do you think it's possible that they could say yes to one, no to the other, or do you think both get in?
I think you got to go even number. I'm just thinking like because I always set my volume on the even number, so I'm like, you got to go even number. I don't want 31 teams, and then that's just silly. So you got to go 32. I'm not. How you feeling the teams? Do they have a plan for that?
As far as
are they going to take? Hey, we get to draft a player from every team that
8 players. Eight players. Each team can protect 8 players, and then all the other players go into the draft pool for those teams.
Okay.
So every single team has to keep at least 8.
So Seattle, I don't think anybody says no. Like out west, because like I said, I think that just gets them. Because Golden State's kind of fading. Remember those years Golden State was getting 40 national televised games. The Lakers were getting 40. You're playing Portland. You're playing, all these games. So now you get the new teams out there. NBA's got to put them on TV. So you're going to get Portland versus Vegas. You're going to get Portland, especially Portland, Seattle. That game's going to be on TV a lot. I think they'll be fine. I think the teams that are
you got to get that Seattle OKC thing jumping, right?
That's going to be game 1. That's how they're going to start off the season.
Yeah, it's got to be in Seattle too. You know what I mean? But
Seattle, so Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook going to be the ambassadors. They're going to come out with the commemorative basketball.
All right. So if Seattle comes back, do they go the green and yellow like Sean Kemp, Gary Payton style, or do they go the green and orange that came later in the mid-90s?
Are they going to be the Supersonics, or are they going to be
I
Seattle?
would think they have to be. I would think they have to be, like, just for branding purposes. It's already there. You still walk around and see people with Supersonics hats, or
I have one. I would go with that.
You might have a Sean Kemp jersey.
I would go with that colorway. I would go with the Supersonics, that bright yellow and green. Or maybe you kind of ride the Seattle Seahawks wave, and you kind of lock in the city that way. I don't know. I wouldn't go full on to it, but yeah, I would say if you go back to the last jersey you had. So whatever Durant played in.
Well, they played in those ugly yellow ones with the
the little Sasquatch. Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll see, sad. But we will talk to you guys in a few days. This is Sports Reports as Ordered. He is the one and only world-renowned, world-famous, cool, calm, and collected. Ladies and gentlemen, he goes by the name of Mr. Logical. And all he asks of you is don't bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
Yes, because they don't play that.
Monmouth Regional Falcons.
They don't play that in Texas where he was born, in VA where he was raised, and definitely not in New Jerusalem that he's holding
Absolutely
down right now.
not.
You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, down here in the Alamo, it's your unorthodox statistician going left so much you thought I was southpaw. I go by the name of 2-5. You can see me ducking in ways that Ronda Rousey could only dream when she see Holly Holm foot coming. We love y'all so much. Thank you for all the support. 475,000 views. The road to 500,000 is on its way. We're coming, baby. Coming for you. Sports Reports is ordered. Love y'all. See you in a few days. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate. Do all the free things. Do all the good things. Liquid Death in hand. Everywhere you get your podcasts. Say less, say more. Holla back.
Real talk only. No chaser, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout.
It's about to go down.
Hey. Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only. No